o'clock hour, we kind of told you that there was something brewing with Baylor football, and we'll ask Max Olson about it as well. Colt Barber from our staff is reporting that Ron Roberts, the Baylor defensive coordinator, and Ronnie Wheat, secondary coach and also special teams coach, have been relieved or fired from the Baylor staff. We saw Dave Aranda make moves after the 2020 season very quickly, and he's doing it again. And Max Olson joins us. We'll have our discussion. Colt's going to join us after Max on 365 Sports. Max, I know that we just got the news. Your thoughts about this? Ron Roberts is kind of like part of the hip, a join to the hip with Dave Aranda.
Yeah, that's a wow for me. I mean, it's certainly, when you think about the progression of your career, like, it's hard to have to, like, fire your mentor, you know? I mean, that's a hard step to have to take, and an interesting decision there by Dave Aranda. Obviously, in Dave's career, he's worked with and he's helped bring up a lot of defensive coaches. So I'm sure he has no shortage of ideas on who he'd want to work with in terms of running his defense from all of the places he's been and the GAs he's had and all that kind of stuff. So certainly curious to see what direction he wants to go in with his defense. But yeah, that is a shocker to me.
Max, just 1 year off of having a fantastic defense that Baylor had.
Yep.
Things change. But is that kind of how we all have to move in college football now, where you can't maybe, get that reboot chance and, after a down year?
Well, it's Dave Aranda. He doesn't seem like a guy who tends to overreact to things, right? So I think that certainly I'm sure that after a season that didn't go the way that any of us expected, I'm sure you do a lot of inventory and analysis of where are we not getting the job done here, and surely must have led him to this conclusion. But yeah, I mean, it's that is how it goes, right? I mean, you can be really good and winning a conference title 1 year and be out of work a year later. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast here with the business.
Well, Max, there's a million ways to go in college football right now between the playoff news and conference championship weekend.
Hey, let me know if anyone goes in the portal while we're talking.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, a couple big ones today, and that's obviously going to keep growing. But I have to start off by asking about Matt Rhule in Nebraska. I mean, obviously that's become official since the last time that we talked to you. We talked to Coach just a couple of days ago. Your thoughts on the big move by Trev Alberts?
I mean, big move by you guys to get that's a big get on day one to get Matt Rhule on your show. So very impressed by that.
Thank you.
No, I think it's very exciting for Nebraska, and I don't have to tell you guys why. I mean, obviously you've seen it, you've lived it. I mean, I think it's just what Nebraska needs is culture and process and all the things that Matt Rhule is about and has done before. I think we all know that it's going to be a big undertaking in terms of this rebuild, and it's just going to take a lot of day-by-day hard work and finding players who really love their coaching staff and really want to be at Nebraska for 4 or 5 years. And I think that's the challenge everywhere, but it's especially tough at Nebraska lately. And so I think he's the right guy for the job, and I think he's taking over at a relatively good time. Certainly when you can come into these jobs now and he probably could bring in 45 new players this offseason just with the way the rules have changed and stuff. And so certainly, he's got to finish putting this staff together and then hit the ground running and recruiting and transfer recruiting and all that. But, I think given patience, I mean, certainly we saw the difference from year 1 to year 2 and then year 2 to year 3 at Baylor. I think that, he's capable of achieving those kinds of things at Nebraska. Don't know if it'll happen as fast or a little bit slower, but, certainly encouraged by that choice by Trev Alberts.
So then you have Wisconsin. Checkmate with Luke Fickell. Your thoughts about Fickell in Wisconsin?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think if Matt Rhule had said no to Nebraska, you wonder would that have turned into a bidding war? Because obviously Nebraska has guaranteed a lot more money for Matt Rhule than Wisconsin did for Luke Fickell. So I'm curious if it would have come to that. But just super impressed that Chris McIntosh, the AD at Wisconsin, was able to pull that off. It was interesting because while I was talking to lots of like agents and people in the college football business a week ago or so, or 2 weeks ago, trying to figure out what's going on with Matt Rhule and the Nebraska search. Are they going to get this done? What's the deal? People kept telling me, I don't know if they're going to go with Jim Leonhard there, but no one really kind of know who they would hire if it weren't Jim Leonhard. And so to go and swoop in and pull that off, I thought was. That was a hell of a get for Wisconsin. And I just think really highly of Luke Fickell and similarly the way that he built his programs. And I think that, as we all know, like for where the Big Ten's heading here, it's going to be a different deal once you get rid of divisions and you bring in USC and UCLA, and who knows if they expand more, right? Like you've got to be aggressive here in trying to build up your program, because it's not just about, winning the Big 12 West anymore.
Max, the Rose Bowl has been defeated, and it's a bad day for people who like parades and football games back to back, but a good day for people who wanted the playoff in 2024. Thoughts on us getting the expanded playoff before 2026?
Yeah, it's good to hear. It's funny when we were getting to the steps of this getting close, you would hear a lot of the CFP folks say, well, hey, I mean, there's still a lot we got to work through and all this stuff. But, once you get people agreeing on a model, it's not that hard to figure out the event planning piece of it. And I know the Rose Bowl stuff seemed a little bit dramatic, but not surprised it went that way. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see, certainly this first we got kind of a 2-year test run here before 26 of kind of how this works and how we can do it better. And certainly I think I'm super excited for the first round games on campuses. I hope that next round of games can move to campuses. I know that'll be in both sites initially, but just excited for that finally to happen. I know it won't be perfect every year, and not everyone's going to love it every year, but I think it's going to be an improvement in a bunch of ways.
So you do like the expanded field more so than staying as is? I know everybody's got their own taste in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's that it's perfect and solves every possible concern, and that certainly there's going to be some years when we're probably saying like, yeah, there's probably about 8 or 9 really good teams this year, or 7 or 8 really good teams, and maybe not 12, but like I still think I still lean towards the argument that it's going to make for a better November in college football with more fan bases engaged, with more teams capable of making. Like you think about today, like I was looking at the projection today, if you were doing it, would be that K-State's the 10 seed and they're playing Tennessee in the first round. But you think about like how different the conference championship games are going to look when we get to that. I mean, if K-State were to beat TCU in a title game, like does Clemson move into the top 4? Does K-State move into the top 4? Like the conference title games and having the 1 versus 2 in the conference title games is going to make those games a lot more dramatic, and I think going to lead to some interesting situations, because right now we all know, Georgia and Michigan State are going to the playoff no matter what. Instead, we could have a situation where, if you lose that game, you're not getting that first round bye, and who knows how far you slide and stuff. So I think some of these things that I think that's just one example of ways in which, you're bringing more access for more programs, giving more of them a chance to win a national championship. And I do think it's not going to be awesome every year, but I think that overall it's going to make the sport better.
Max, the Heisman Trophy, of course, voting deadline, I think, is sometime on Monday, and then the announcement in a week. Does Caleb Williams, in your opinion, if you look at the just national perspective, I know I have a vote, we can't give our opinions on it, but do you think he has to win this weekend to just clinch it, or does he still have a chance if he doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers for him are pretty unbelievable. I think it's like 44 touchdowns, total touchdowns, and 3 picks or something like that. Like, I think even if they lose, you would think, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think that Caleb Williams, I would hope people have not sent their ballots in already and just locked that away for him, because certainly I think Utah is going to challenge USC. But yeah, he has a chance to go win it. And if they don't win that game, it's a great question. I mean, maybe that brings some more people into play. Obviously, C.J. Stroud's not playing this weekend, and obviously Max Duggan has an opportunity here. I suppose you could say that about Stetson Bennett and other players too, but I think it's an awesome opportunity for Max Duggan against the top 10 team to go out and kind of finalize his case for it too, and have a chance on a big stage with everyone watching him to go have a big game. And I think Max Duggan deserves to go to New York City, and hopefully he can have the kind of game this weekend that makes that possible.
Max, I know that Lane Kiffin calls himself the Portal King, but you are truly the real Portal King, because you've got to follow it from every angle. Hudson Card and Brennan Armstrong, probably the top 2 quarterback names that have thrown their names in. Where do you see each of those guys, or what kind of program fits them best?
Yeah, it's already shaping up to be an interesting quarterback class. I would throw in Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech and Luke Altmaier from Ole Miss, Cade McNamara, which funny, we're kind of hearing a lot of Iowa talk with him, which you wonder what offensively where they're going at Iowa, but Kate McNamara leaving Michigan's a big one. I think with Hudson Card, the news of the last hour does intrigue me a little bit. You wonder if Tom Herman can get Hudson Card to come to FAU and kind of sell him on playing in an offense that that he looked good in before. I know when Tom Herman was at Texas, those guys felt like he was really the next big thing there. But I think Hudson's going to have some good opportunities, whether it's in state or even Power 5 schools. I think he's kind of like Shane Buechele, right? Like you got recruited over a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you're a bad player. And I think if he goes to the right system, he's going to have a chance to be really productive next year. I could see that being a Power 5 school or maybe somewhere a little bit more familiar or closer to home. And in terms of Brennan Armstrong, I mean, if you've got a quarterback need, you're probably calling that guy. I think like Tennessee and Notre Dame and a bunch of these schools, I would imagine are blowing him up right away because that's a proven guy that that when you watch them in 2021, when you put the right stuff around him, he can put up monster numbers. He was really, really good last year at Virginia, and then after that, Bronco Mendenhall steps down. His OC, Robert Anai, goes to Syracuse. Pretty much his entire offensive line went in the transfer portal, and his running back who went to Washington. He bet on staying there and playing for Tony Elliott, and it just didn't go as well this year. It was a pretty rough year. And I think him moving on as a grad transfer makes a lot of sense. I think the Power 5 schools have to be blowing him up this afternoon for sure.
Did you have Boca Raton as the spot where Tom Herman would return to college football?
His name was popping up for a lot of jobs, so I'm not surprised he got a group of 5 job out here. It's funny. I guess you could probably look at it and say Tom Herman is kind of on the Lane Kiffin path here a little bit, right? I mean, I think a guy that certainly has proven he can be an OC at the highest level. First run as a head coach at Houston was successful, and then at Texas at a higher level. A lot bumpier ride, although the record was successful. It's an interesting comeback here for Tom Herman, who's been out of the spotlight here for 2 years, and that's quite a rebuild. I mean, that thing was not going very well under Willie Taggart, and it's going to take some work. But certainly, you look at the Lane Kiffin era there, and they won 11 games in 2 of his 3 years there. So I'm not saying it's going to happen that fast for Tom, but I think that's a pretty low pressure setting for him to get back and really prove himself.
I actually think that Boca Raton's a great place for Tom Herman. There's a lot of angry people who send food back. I think he's got that vibe. Like he's the kind of guy who would be very mad about a sandwich.
Okay. Yeah. I've not been to Boca. I'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah. Grew up on the other coast, but went there quite a bit. So,
God, you are.
and that's just what every single person there does. Huh? Okay, wow. I learned something new today. Okay.
Max, as always, we appreciate your time. We know you've got a lot on your plate with the conference championship games, the portal, coaching searches, and then now we go into the news that Colt Barber broke a minute ago. Thanks for your time, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Well, I got the Earl Campbell Award coming up too, right?
Yeah, we do.
A lot of votes coming up here.
Absolutely. That's just
Looking
around the
forward
corner. Can't wait for that as well.
Thanks, guys.
So if you're now joining us, you didn't hear earlier, Colt Barber